Hey, and welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. My name is Beth Bergen, and I am a global leadership and communication coach. I work with executives, with managers, with lots of business owners, and often too with starting entrepreneurs. And what I'm all about is helping them to build their influence by improving their leadership and their communication skills. And so what they can do is influence more broadly. They can lead cohesive teams, they can influence teams of people, they can really drive the results, whether the results are their own results or the results of their team. And also they become more visible, more influential into the space that they absolutely want to be getting into. Look, I am here live most Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So for me, I'm in Queensland. It's Eastern Standard Time, 1 p.m. Sydney and Melbourne, it's actually 2 p.m. because they are on daylight saving time. Excuse me. Hey, today what I want to do is talk about something that is actually quite common amongst the people that I coach. I'm wondering, have you ever struggled with what others might feel about a decision that you've made? I reckon that you probably have, because it's tough. It's tough enough as a human being to make decisions that maybe others aren't going to like or agree with. And it can be pretty debilitating as a leader, pretty debilitating completely as a leader. Why? Well, you want to be respected, you want to be trusted. And for many of us, we're really trying very hard to be liked. And the sad thing is that once you chase that approval all the time, your leadership actually diminishes. So today, what we're going to talk about is how leading with integrity is important even when it feels uncomfortable to you. And we're going to reiterate that leadership is not actually a popularity contest. You're responsible as a leader, and you're actually being respectful of your role, of your position, of the organization you work in, and of your team when you make those hard calls. So we've got 7 key points that we're going to look at today. And the first one is this: approval seeking is a real trap. Why is this? Why do we get stuck in this? Well, at home, at work, and in all aspects of our life, when we get caught into this "I need the approval of others" trap, it actually weighs us down. And that becomes a really tough gig. It's hard for us to understand that the only person whose approval we actually need is our own. It's really hard for people to understand that. And for many leaders, now this doesn't only happen to new leaders, it happens to leaders at various stages of their leadership journey. What becomes really important is that they're liked, and they get really fearful about this. Oh, what if I disappoint people? What if I disappoint my team? What if my team don't like me? And when we get caught up in that, it is actually harder for us to lead. Why? Well, in the first instance, because this need to be liked means that we get into more justification of every single decision. So there's less clarity. It also means that we're less decisive. So there's this uncertainty that comes into play. And that, unfortunately, impacts our authority. Now, when we start to lead for popularity, which is my second topic, that comes at a cost. When we start to lead for this popularity, that absolutely, there are so many costs involved with that. And as I've already said, our authority is diminished. What happens? We're leading for popularity, so we start avoiding the hard decisions. And in some cases, we avoid making any decision at all. We avoid the tough conversations, which means that we make allowances, or we're perceived by others to have biases and to be making allowances for poor behaviour. We let people off. Now, we've talked about this before in Leadershipisation, that there is nothing more demotivating for your team than having them see you allow someone to behave in a way that's not positive for the whole team and to have them get away with it. So, that perceived bias, those allowances for poor behaviour are one of the costs. There also can be a real resentment that builds up around this, and it starts to be a misalignment between the values of your team or individual members of your team and yourself, because we start to become over accommodating when what we're doing is going after the popular vote. And when we're over accommodating, we've got to justify, and we already know the over justification doesn't allow for clarity. What it does is it creates a confusion and inconsistency. People don't know where you stand anymore because there's no certainty. You probably don't know where you stand anymore because you're wondering at every opportunity whether this decision's going to go down okay. Yeah? The other thing is, and this is one that people often don't think about, it actually teaches your team poor behaviours because you're being inconsistent. So that leading from a popularity perspective with that as your outcome really comes at a huge cost, and mostly it will be a lowering in productivity, and potentially the culture in your team will become more destructive, more toxic. The third point that I want to make today is around values decision making. Now, most of us have our own personal values. If you need to work on and identify your personal values, reach out, and I've got a process that I can take you through to do that. The second set of values that we need to be representing are the values of the organisation or the company or the business that we work for. So although it can be tough sometimes to make values-based decisions, however, they feel steady and they feel strong. And they feel steady and strong even if others disagree with them. So something for you to ask yourself when it comes to these value-based decisions is this: is this right, or am I just taking an easy option? Is this right, or am I just taking an easy option? Because if you're leading for popularity, if you're thinking, I want to come up with a decision that's going to please everybody, very often, most often, that is the easy way out. Your team must actually be able to see those values on display. And as I said, not just your values, but the company values as well. Now, my fourth point is this, and I think a lot of leaders, and this is why I've made it its own point, a lot of leaders don't recognize this. There is a difference between being liked and being respected. Now, this is a really big one. It actually feels totally different. Understand that you can be liked and respected, However, the respect will have been something that you've earned, and it's better if it comes first because it's got behaviours and boundaries attached to it. So how do we build this feeling of being respected as a leader? Well, you build it through consistency. The same message all the time, being consistent, managing your own emotions, regulating them, being consistent. You build it through fairness, not through any perceived biases or through putting up with poor behavior because it's easier than having a tough conversation, but the same expectations applied fairly to everyone. You build it through honesty. And I'll show you later, I'll talk to you later about a way that you can start some of the difficult conversations so that it makes it easier for you. You also build this respect through clarity. By providing clarity, by being clear with what you're saying, really clear with your expectations, and making sure that people understand what's expected of them. That's how you build that respect, not through approval, not through pleasing everybody, not through taking the soft options. You know, something for you to remember is this. You can be well liked and lead poorly. Just because you're liked doesn't mean you're respected and you're a great leader. Often people like us because they think, as leaders, because they think we're a soft touch. How many times have you thought that about someone? How many times have you experienced that in a role that you've had? Or we can lead well without being universally liked. Leading and liking don't have to go hand in hand. Now, when you can reach a point where you can do the hard things and influence without fear of not being liked, you've come to a good place in your leadership journey, because it's really easy for fear to actually override this. It's really easy for fear to override your ability to make the decision that best suits the team, the organization, the situation that you find yourself in. Okay? My fifth point is this. Emotional courage is essential. It's part of your leadership intelligence toolbox. Now, I talk about that all the time with you. The leadership intelligence toolbox. Leadership is not always going to be comfortable. Sometimes it's going to be really uncomfortable. But you know what? This is where your lessons actually are. This is where you need that emotional courage. And it's things like this. Sometimes we've got to hold the best, the most positive, the courageous line during meetings or conversations, especially when we're dealing with individuals or a number of people who are disappointed. Emotional courage from you as the leader is essential in conversations. Imagine a redundancy or a retrenchment conversation. It would not go well if you were a blubbering mess and trying hard to find the words to actually share with the person you're about to make redundant or about to retrench. You need to have that emotional courage. You are the person as a leader who must demonstrate that emotional maturity. So learning to make the decisions that are right for the circumstance the situation, the organization, taking all of those things into account, learning how to do that is an essential part of your leadership intelligence growth journey. What are we doing? Every single time we're experiencing one of these uncomfortable situations and we're learning the lesson, we're reminding ourselves about the sixth point that I want to bring up with you. And that is that this is a long game. And it's important that you learn to play that long game. It's not about, oh, I just have to do this once and then I'm good to go. Because leadership is a journey and it's not a smooth, straight line, up or down. It's windy. There are hills. There are highs and lows in your leadership journey. So it's really important that you learn to play that long game. What do we need? We need integrity. We need clarity. We need fairness. We need respect. Those things that we've already talked about, because they compound. They compound. Over time, they compound. And what do? They create the magic of trust. And when we have trust that's built slowly and powerfully, it is the most awesome leadership tool that you can have. Because you've made the effort. So something for you to ask yourself around here in terms of learning how to play the long game is this question. How do I want people to describe my leadership when I'm not in the room? How do I want people to describe my leadership when I'm not in the room? Yeah? Let's look now at some ways that you can lead with courage today. I've got 3 of these that I want to share with you. And usually when we're doing this, some other things come up because they just come up in the conversation anyway. But the first one, this is about leading with courage today. The first one is this. Do an integrity check. Just think to yourself, would I make this decision again in a year's time? Integrity has stickability. So what you decide today, if it's not going to pass that integrity test in 12 months' time, maybe you need to review your thinking. That's the first one. The second one is this. A lot of people don't know how to start difficult conversations or tough conversations. And so I would say to my clients, have a clear first line. Have a clear point that you know sets the scene from your perspective. And something like this. I want to be upfront with you. I want to be upfront with you. Sets the scene, going to be upfront. Now, a lot of people say to me, well, Beth, why don't you start by saying, I want to be honest with you today? And my reason for not doing that is because that immediately leads people to thinking, well, why weren't you honest with me last time we talked? Why weren't you honest with me yesterday or a week ago or a month ago? So you're opening yourself up to possible, honesty? Aren't you honest? So talk about being upfront in that circumstance. This is also about, it's also here about learning to hold yourself and others accountable. You know, like I know this might be hard to hear, but it's still the right call. I know that this might be hard to do, but it's still the right call. I know this might be a hard decision to make, but it's still the right call. And what's important is that we adopt a mindset that means that we're having conversations not confrontations. Conversations, not complacency, which means you're ignoring the need to have the conversation. Conversations, not charming people so that they go away thinking, lovely person. It's important that you look at showing up as a leader and that you show up as a leader with courage. The more often you take a deep breath and show up with courage, the easier it's actually going to get for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't have to keep doing it into the future, because as we've already talked, leadership is a bit of an up and down journey. So some reflection questions for you. I've got two today, two reflection questions. The first one is this: where in your leadership do you avoid decisions or conversations to maintain harmony? Now, leadership is about self-leadership. Leadership is leadership at work, at home, in your family, in your relationship, in your own life, in your community. So where in your leadership, at work and self-leadership, do you avoid decisions or conversations to maintain harmony? Now, the reason you need to identify these is because this is exactly where you need to pour some courage into, so that the next time you do it, you take that big breath and you think, okay, what are some strategies that I can use to get started? Do I need to put that line out there that says, I'm going to get really upfront with you? The second reflection question is this: how would your leadership change if you prioritized respect over likability? Respect over likability. Now, I know that it would change in quite a number of ways, and many people are afraid to change that because it's really scary for them to let go of this need to be liked. Have a think. And if you need to, reach out for some additional support, some additional tips. And obviously, if coaching is what you need, reach out for that as well. So, what's a summary of today? Well, leadership requires these tough decisions. That's what's going to happen. And so you need courage. You need integrity, because your authority is what's important. Your approval is likely to fade. People liking you all the time is likely to fade. You can't please all of the people all of the time. They might not like you, but they might not like your decisions, but if they trust you, then it's easy for you to continue to be consistent, to be clear, and to be fair. Okay, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about leading with courage. If you've got questions or comments, pop them on the platform that you're watching this on and we'll get back to you. If you're watching a replay, #replay would be wonderful. If you're looking to build your rapport with people, if you're looking to build your courage, your influence, and your authority, my 30-day Say It Smarter program would be an ideal starting place for you, because authority is one of the 3 pillars that I base all of my coaching on. If you'd like to talk to me some more about the Say It Smarter program, 30 days really compacted and impactful over those 30 days. And at the end of it, you've got a really positive, action-orientated plan to move you forward. Reach out. We'll make sure that the link to make a time with me is underneath this conversation. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. I'll see you next week. Bye now.